Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all fandoms, welcome to the Ferret Raccoon podcast episode 107. I am your one and only host for this podcast, the Angry Raccoon, or just Raccoon for short, for those of you who are not aware of this podcast. And yes, it is just me on this podcast because basically everyone, including myself to some extent, is pretty much busy, and as you can already hear in the tone of my voice, I have a sore throat, and that little slip up in terms of voice quality is probably going to happen for the next 20 to 30 minutes because my voice is pretty much shot. Yeah, it's not great, but I'm going to basically try and get this podcast out. I know it's late and it's just me, but let's just keep it rolling for the most part. Consistency is best. So if you hear those little pauses, that's just me trying to gain my breath back because, like I already said, my throat is pretty swollen and I can hardly talk for the most part. So please bear with me on this episode and we'll be back to our, a regular structure, I guess, for the next podcast. But anyway, let's get into our podcast, which is going to be a short one anyway, and we'll talk about some of the things I was doing over the last few weeks, since the last podcast, I should say. And as I was pretty busy for the most part, a lot of planning for next month. February is going to be pretty busy for me. Lots of events happening. I will talk about those, obviously, on the next podcast as they so happen to happen. But the only thing I managed to do for the most part was I pretty much watched/rewatched all of Black Mirror, excluding the Bandersnatch interactive DVD menu/film. I basically used Magic to watch series 3 and 4 without using Netflix. Didn't even go to anyone's house, didn't get a subscription, but I watched it all. It's Magic for the most part. And given that seasons 1 and 2 are fairly older and most people kind of already know the general gist of it, I won't really talk about it too much. I'm also very surprised that of all the episodes in season 2 I had not seen, it was the episode White Bear. Now somehow I had managed not to get spoiled by White Bear, but which I'm going to consider an achievement given how much people like to rave about this episode. But I'll quickly go through my thoughts on every single episode in seasons 3 and 4. This won't take long, obviously, given that I think I have somewhat interesting thoughts on every episode. So the first episode of season 3 is an episode called Nosedive, and I really didn't like this episode. I thought it was overblown, way too long, and I thought it was honestly awful and a terrible start to essentially a Netflix takeover of a British TV series, and it just felt so lifeless, and it felt so much like a bit of fiction as opposed to other Black Mirror episodes where they actually feel like reality. Absolutely hated it. The only thing I really liked was the main actress and her laugh. That was it. Things don't get much better with the second episode, Playtest. This episode was so boring that I found myself taking a break to cook myself my Sunday dinner, which took 2 hours. Way too long of an episode, and I really didn't get it. It was just kind of stupid, honestly, and I don't think the director's ever been on a plane before, which is a bit strange to me anyway. Next episode 3, Shut Up and Dance. This was pretty much a return to form and what you would kind of expect from Black Mirror episodes. It was warrant its length, good episode, it made sense in terms of like Black Mirror and all that kind of stuff. Really enjoyed it. Pretty intense. It kind of had like that paranoia, and I loved some of the cinematography to match said paranoia and the idea of always being watched from whatever. Next episode 4, San Juniper. I'm not sure how you pronounce this episode. Was really, really surprised that this episode actually won an Emmy, I believe, which is kind of crazy because as much as I like this episode for a lot of its storytelling and its visuals or aesthetic for the most part, I don't think it's really Emmy worthy. It kind of makes me feel as if they gave this episode the Emmy for the wrong reasons or for a particular reason. But it is a pretty great episode, very disturbing concept, and yeah, probably one of the more like frightening episodes if you really think about it. And that's honestly what Black Mirror is about really the thought after, the idea and the thoughts that come from, that concept for the most part. But yeah, still a pretty good episode. Next episode 5, we have Men Against Fire. Very simple Master Race story. I didn't really care about it, honestly. Hated in the Nation, I thought was a pretty good episode. It basically felt like a weird mini movie, and it did kind of have a very realistic kind of feel to it, given how if something like this actually happened, I'd imagine this is what would happen for the most part. A very strong episode and a good end to the series for the most part. Series 4, now, I'd heard pretty bad things about Series 4. I'd heard pretty good things about Season 4. Unfortunately, Series 4 is just as bad as Series 3 to some extent, or just as good, I should really say. We start off with the first episode being the USS Callister. I'm very indifferent to this episode. It honestly just felt like an excuse for the director or some other writers to just rip off Star Trek, or just make fun of the more current Star Trek films. I forget who's currently doing those films or whatever, but yeah, concept's kind of cool, but it's already kind of been done before, even within Black Mirror, so it wasn't that special. So that's why I kind of talk about it just being an excuse to just do Star Trek. So, but it worked. It worked as a story for the most part. Archangel, it was honestly a really boring episode. It's basically bad parenting, the episode, and I found myself so frustrated with a few of the characters, because a lot of these solutions and a lot of the situations, the way they could have been dealt, I don't understand some of the choices made in this episode. It didn't really make any sense. Crocodile was just trash. I'm not even going to talk about Crocodile. I thought it was just pointless. It was the most non-Black Mirror episode so far. It was honestly just a short film that was just slapped together. Honestly, I don't really care about the episode. Hang the DJ was okay for the most part. Once again, the concept's already kind of been done before, way better, but it's really the final scene / shot that really makes the episode. It's pretty boring up until that one point where everything makes sense, or you get the twist. Episode 5, Metalhead. Personally, one of my favorite episodes, honestly. Whoever made this episode knew exactly what they were doing. They did it masterfully. I can't even speak, excuse me. And it was an interesting take for what they were trying to do, and I love the way they definitely were able to blend the CGI and the cinematography to make everything look so in universe. And I thought it was fantastic, short film that just worked perfectly. Probably one of my favorite episodes, hands down, maybe even my favorite episode. And the final episode, Black Museum. This is the episode that basically makes, or things start to add up with this episode. And it was strong because it kind of makes fun of Black Mirror and anthology series as a whole, which I really liked. And I liked the way that things are kind of tied together. And honestly, they could have just ended it here, but obviously Netflix is not going to allow that, simply put. They're going to ask for another 45 episodes. Really good episode. It's definitely an episode about storytelling and how well you can tell a story and link it together. So really strong stuff. But that's pretty much all I watched for the most part. Let's move on to our main topics for the most part. And the first thing I want to talk about is that YouTube site / company Machinima, known for making video editing, funny, serious stuff. I'm sure most people my age or older know about Machinima. Yeah, they basically deleted all their videos for various reasons, and I think this came as a bit of a shock. I know most people are probably saying or thinking to themselves, oh, it's good they're shut down because they were a terrible company, they lock people into forever contracts and stuff, and all this stuff, which is still valid, but at the same time you almost kind of got to give them a little bit of respect for what they did. They were the first to kind of go about actually working into partnerships and kind of taking advantage of the fact that there are people who play like Let's Plays and video games and stuff like that, and kind of giving them a bench or a platform to kind of get recognized, which I thought was honestly pretty strong for the most part. And you gotta give them that for the most part, which I really liked. Now, I think most people are kind of wondering why exactly this happened, because I mean, we're talking about tens of hundreds of thousands of videos just deleted just like that overnight. It literally happened, I believe, on the 18th of January 2019, without any warning. But the gist of it is that essentially what happened was, let me double check because I need to, because it gets a little bit confusing, a bit of like tech company business stuff. So basically, Warner Brothers basically bought Machinima back in 2016, which is a Time Warner company. And essentially, what then happened of last year was AT&T, excuse me, another big, global entertainment network, essentially bought Time Warner, including Warner Brothers and everything else they own, for a reasonable 85 billion. So what essentially happened was that now that AT&T owned all of Machinima, that basically would have caused problems, because at any moment, any one of Machinima's single or multiple videos, they could have been copyright striked or had copyright infringement, which could have resulted in all of AT&T's other subsidiary YouTube channels, because it technically counts under one like name or owner. They could have all basically got taken down under the umbrella or blocked, or however you want to put it. So, and it also could have led to lawsuits for the most part, which is not what you really need. And there wasn't really any point in a massive billion-dollar company really going to court over one video that some person they don't even care about made a couple years ago. So unfortunately, they chose to delete all the videos and not take the risk, which from a business standpoint, it makes sense, obviously, but it's a massive shame that they didn't even consider archiving this history. We're talking about over a decade of history just gone, destroyed, because it was simply a liability because of how the company saw it, and essentially how YouTube now works, where anyone can get any video taken off just because they don't like it, which is a massive shame. And it's also funny as well, which I wanted to kind of talk about, is that you hear a lot of people talking about how you can find everything on the internet and it's a good way to archive things, but it's funny how digital media is usually the first kind of bit of medium to disappear the fastest and without warning. So hopefully this will be a little bit more of a eye-opener for a lot of people for the most part. It's really sad, and it's odd, because I do hope that one day they kind of put everything back. I mean, could you imagine if I just delete every podcast without warning? No one would even know this podcast existed. I mean, just think about that. That's a Black Mirror episode in itself right there. But I also wonder if AT&T might be liable for any re-uploads of Machinima videos, because every Machinima video basically had their watermark. So I'm wondering if someone does go and copyright strike a video, that they would link it back to Machinima, aka link it back to AT&T. That's an interesting thought to kind of bring up. I wonder what will happen, or if that's even possible. I don't know if anyone knows. Maybe YouTube doesn't know. YouTube is so incompetent, they probably don't even know themselves. The site will probably crash again. But it's sad though, really, and I wanted to address this. I mean, some of my favorite Machinima videos / series were definitely the Two Best Friends Play, and some of the other shows like Fighterpedia and all those, Let's Play Adventures, Two Best Friends Adventures and stuff like that. You had Sanity Not Included, which is a hilarious, like, satirical comedy show that kind of literally used game engines to make very juvenile and stupid jokes for the most part. Profound Moments in Left 4 Dead 2, which was a fun series while it lasted. All Your History or Belong to Us, which is a great history on video gaming series that kind of predated a lot of other internet gaming historians that are kind of present nowadays. But yeah, it's interesting. I'm sure there are many more other Machinima videos and series that people like. If you guys know of any, especially if you know where I can actually get some, because I'm desperate to get those episodes now that they are now technically rare, please let me know. Definitely email us at raccoonplusfriends@gmail.com. Let us know any of your favorite series is, or if you have, like, if you're sitting on a secret stash of like videos, that would be awesome for the most part. Now let's move on to our main topics, and that's the trailers for the most part. And the biggest trailer undoubtedly is the trailer for Spider-Man Far From Home, the international teaser trailer. This was actually teased for a good few months that they would drop this, and it finally did. And it's interesting to see that Sony and Marvel are not wasting anytime, milking the life and creativity out of Spider-Man once again. It's odd. I mean, it's another film where they just filmed or gathered some scenes where the characters are in London or other places within Europe. I mean, you see a shot of like the Tower Bridge being destroyed by a CGI monster again. That's like the second time this is going to happen in a film. It's going to happen in the Hellboy terrible reboot film. There's a shot with a monster destroying the Tower Bridge. A monster's going to attack the Tower Bridge. Almost as if it's cheap to film in England. I wonder if any other films are going to be filmed in England for no real reason, where the characters now have to go, oh yeah, we've got to go to London for some reason. That should be interesting. But yeah, in terms of this film, yeah, I'm really not feeling it for the most part. It looks like nothing. It looks like nothing and everything / too much is happening in this film. I mean, does Nick Fury really need to be there? I mean, do we really need a setup or an awkward, kind of plot romance between like Aunt May and Jon Favreau? I mean, I'm sure it's going to be sparing, but that's kind of, do I really have to tap my watch while watching this film? Kind of going, come on, get to the point of the film. I mean, why are his friends here? I know they're in like chess club or something. I don't even remember the previous film. They were in a club, right? Or something. I really don't care about these potential damsels in distress. I mean, we have 5 of them, and I'm sure Spider-Man's going to need to man up and save them for the most part. But the big thing most people are talking about is Mysterio, a villain I didn't really know people cared about. Mysterio's always been a very dumb character, and it's funny how so many people have just come out the woodworks and go, yeah, finally, Mysterio in a film. I'm like, really? I mean, within this film, he looks pretty lame and generic, which is a big shame. I mean, there's no color in his costume. I honestly didn't know who the hell that was when they first revealed that. I was like, who is this? Like, I mean, I think one character even says, oh, he's a cross between Iron Man and Doctor Strange. And I was like, is that what he's supposed to be? Like, is he just a ripoff of them? Which would be a much more interesting character other than Mysterio, because, yeah, I really don't care about Mysterio, especially his look. It just looks so safe for the most part. And I mean, and especially given all the things that have happened in the Marvel Universe, if no one brings up the point that these cartoony monsters are fake, then everyone in this film is an idiot. Because, come on now. I mean, within our context, the CGI looks pretty poor, and really, the same guy shows up. It's a classic case of con man. Come on, you can't be that stupid. And anyway, I shouldn't really be rambling too much about Spider-Man. It's not as if I'm going to watch. I know everyone will, because Spider-Man is the greatest thing ever right now. Spider-Man can do no wrong, despite the fact, according to, in my opinion, there hasn't been a good game or a good film in a while. But anyway, that's just me. I like to keep it real for the most part. Let's move on to our next trailer, which is John Wick 3 Parabellum. Oh, I can't, I'm not even going to try and say that, because my voice is already on the brink of being destroyed. And yeah, John Wick Chapter 3, let's just call it that, aka The Man and His Dog on the Run, which I think would be a much better name for the most part. But yes, it's interesting. It's an interesting take for a trailer, especially a John Wick trailer, as it's focusing a little bit more on the struggle with John, the story, and kind of like his journey of what he's kind of doing and where he's going at this point. I'm trying not to spoil too much for those of you who haven't seen the second film, which I would recommend if you've seen the first, or just watch. Yeah, just watch them all. Really, they're really worth your time. Dumb, fun, pretty well done and executed action for the most part. It's interesting. I really hope that we're gonna get some kind of all-out war with epic, stylish, old boy-esque battle royale fight scenes and cinematography. I mean, I'm pretty hyped for this film, honestly. I like John Wick 2. It wasn't my favorite film, but This one looks like it might be a little bit more to the point, which is what I want. I mean, it is interesting because anyone could be assassin in this film at strike at any moment, which hopefully the film is going to keep the tension and suspense up pretty much throughout the whole film. I mean, we got fights on bikes, we've got gun fu, we've got attack dogs, and, a pretty world to essentially admire, with some great cinematography kind of taking a little bit of a Hong Kong neo aesthetic for the most part once again, which is an aesthetic that really works with this almost kind of like lavish underground hitman, kind of theme, which I'm really looking forward to. And the one other thing I'm also wondering, which I'm very interesting to see how this even plays out, is why the hell John is even in like a desert. I mean, we're going from city to desert. Like, I mean, it's a nice visual shift, honestly, but very odd. We'll see. I'm definitely looking forward to this film for the most part. That's all I really have to say about that one, because I mean, it's not exactly an original thing. Next film I want to talk about is a film I don't think enough people are talking about, so I always like to throw in like the odd film that maybe you haven't heard of for the most part, and that film is going to be the film titled High Life, which is essentially, the way I've put it, is the true sequel to 1979's Alien, or you could say the sequel to Moon, I Never Knew I Wanted, to some extent, maybe, I don't know. This film is kind of weird. I mean, first of all, we got Robert Pattinson, who is once again in a strange role. If you haven't watched Good Time, please go and watch Good Time, because it's fantastic and he's in it. Also, Andre 3000, one half of Outkast, is in this film. Like, okay, I mean, sure. But that was a bit of a surprise. I mean, I do like a lot of the stuff that's in this, and I love what they're doing visually as well, for the most part. Like, for example, even within the trailer, you have the classic staple of, constant repeating of a sound that creates a paranoia-inducing kind of feeling. Check, we had that with someone kind of repeating a word. Can't remember what it is right now, as like daddy or something like that. I do not know. I mean, their ship, for one fact, see, my voice is already going. Their ship, for the most part, looks like it's just a floating rectangle. It's very un-sci-fi, and that's probably why I like it. But then they have very sci-fi looking kind of like astronaut like gear, which is interesting. It's someone doing their own take on something. They were obviously inspired by films like Moon and 21 Space Odyssey and stuff like that, so it could be interesting. And I mean, everyone looks pretty damn tired and creepy. Everyone in this trailer basically looks like me for the most part, especially right now, recording in the dark, sounding like absolute crap. But yeah, it's interesting. And I really do want to know what the hell's going on in this film, because it seems like it could get pretty sexual and pretty disturbing, which I kind of hope it does, because, there's not a lot of films that, especially space horror films, you can say are actually truly erotic or visually creepy, which I like. And I do like a lot of the switch ups in terms of cinematography. You got very harsh mood lighting for the most part, which I really do adore for the most part. But yeah, I definitely want to try and check this one out. I get the feeling it's going to be one of those films that is in cinema for like 2 days and then it's gone forever. You got to wait like 6 months for the DVD release or something. The struggles of my life for the most part. But yeah, let's end this podcast by quickly talking about the Oscar nominations, which popped up a few days ago. I'm kind of going to avoid the obvious for the most part, and I'm going to talk about a few positives for the most part. It's pretty cool to see that The Favourite and Roma are pretty much up for the most amount of nominations, about 10 together, which is pretty cool. I don't know anything about Roma, but I can testify that The Favourite is a fantastic film and probably deserves all the awards. All of them. Just give The Favourite all the awards, honestly, and I'd be pretty content with that for the most part. I'll talk about a few of the bigger ones. So Best Picture is the one everyone's kind of raving about, talking about. So we have Best Picture, we have Black Panther, Black Klansman, Bohemian Rhapsody, oh that's a lot of B's, The Favourite, Green Book, Roma, A Star Is Born, and Vice. It's a pretty interesting selection because we got to talk about the elephant in the room, Vice. In England we haven't even got that film yet. I don't know what Vice is. I don't know if it's good. I honestly don't care from the posters I've seen. Whatever, I guess. Star is Born, I'm very surprised people really hyping about this, but I've heard a lot of these songs and they're just like, bleh, for the most part. I really don't get it. I think it's just hype. I think it's just them once again going, oh, we gotta put some variety there. Gotta give Bohemian Rhapsody some competition, I guess. I don't know. And obviously the big one that I got to talk about, which everyone has obviously been talking about, and the fact that it's even here on the Best Picture is such an outrage for the most part. Obviously, I'm going to give my thoughts on it. Black Klansman. Really? Like, really? I'm sorry. Spike Lee does not deserve an Oscar, and I hope that he does not get the Oscar for that, whatever Black Klansman was supposed to be a political statement. I understand this is just pandering, because every year the Oscars are constantly called out for being like sexist, racist, homophobic, and basically just grumpy old men. I get it. Throw some films with a black cast in it, that will get people off our backs, but come on guys, don't shill into those people. I mean, seriously, don't. I mean, I'm really disappointed, but I get it. Views are low. No one watches it. I mean, does anyone actually watch the Oscars? No, it's too long and it's boring and it's not needed. Everyone knows what the best film of 2018 was. Yeah? And it was nominated for Best Picture. But still, annoying as hell. There isn't really too much else that I want to kind of talk about regarding the Oscars. I mean, mostly the same people are basically around and there. I mean, I already kind of mentioned that, the favorite in Roma is pretty much, they got like 30% of, they're going to walk away with an award. They got like 30% of the Oscars. So, whatever, it's pretty much a done deal for the most part. Animated features, I guess, soon as I am a little bit more of the animation guy on the team. We have Incredibles 2, Isle of Dogs, Maria. See, I can't even say it. Maria. Excuse me. What is it? I'm really struggling here. Maria of the future, basically. Ralph. Oh God. Ralph Breaks the Internet / Wreck-It Ralph 2. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Either Isle of Dogs or Maria. Those will be the best picks because those are the better animated films in my opinion. I would love to see Mirai. Yeah, that's it. Mirai. Why could I not say Mirai? God, I really suck at pronunciation, especially today. Mariah deserves Best Picture, simply put, because Mariah was fantastic and beautiful. Second running Isle of Dogs. Everything else doesn't deserve it. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse does not deserve an Oscar. Simply put, that film is not great. I've watched at least 5 minutes of it, and I turned it off because it's not worth my time. Simply put. And I guess we can end on a very bitter note, because I am pretty bitter, because it is the Oscars. And the Oscars suck, and they're not needed. And I shouldn't have to be telling these people what they should and shouldn't be nominating stuff. Yes, it's their opinion at the end of the day, but their opinion is pretty weak, if you ask me. And that's pretty much going to round off the podcast. We're going to do the video of the episode, which is going to be from Injury Reserve, featuring Rico Nasty and Proteins. Rico Nasty and Proteins, terrible names. Please change your names, guys, because that's awful. Your names suck. Anyway, Injury Reserve with Jawbreaker. Now, this is a pretty interesting rap song because it doesn't even feel like a rap song. The instrumental is so skeletal and very almost chimey, lullaby-esque. And what the song essentially talks about, which is not something I would imagine a rap group comes back after, almost 2 years not releasing any music. A song kind of talking about the way fashion works in relation to how people kind of identify each other and identify themselves with simply just brands and clothing. And I love the way the video was kind of shot very realistically as a fashion show catwalk. There's also another video the band or duo or group uploaded where you kind of see the very specific camera movements that you do see during fashion shows. But really interesting song. Definitely wanted to throw something a little bit less known in there for the most part. And yeah, I think that's pretty much everything I want to talk about on this podcast. I am surprised, guys, that I was able to continue talking without my voice just going, for the most part. But yeah, there isn't anything else to add, because I'm looking around as if someone else is going to chime in, but that's not going to happen. Once again, I want to apologize for the sound of my terrible voice. I want to apologize if for whatever reason you don't like the fact it's just me. Sorry, I guess. More people will be back next time. We'll see. And also the fact this podcast went up a little bit later than usual. I know no one really listens to this podcast, but I'm sure someone is probably not happy about that. Oh yeah, that's me. Yeah, there's nothing else for me to add. Yeah, we'll definitely be back. Hopefully there'll be actually some more news. January is very slow for the most part, so it's understandable that no one's dropping trailers or talking about anything. And I personally was avoiding a lot of really dumb stuff. For those of you listening, I guess within 2019, you probably note there's a lot of things I straight up did not talk about. And the reason I did not talk about them is because I do not want to get pissed off again, because that shit shouldn't be happening. The world is in a pretty messed up place at the moment, and I'm trying to do my best right now without getting depressed. So that's why I'm not bringing up that rubbish. But anyway, we'll be back. Hopefully I'll be back with others. And I guess I'll end this podcast like I always do by saying, well, I was the Angry Raccoon, and I will, and hopefully we will see you on the next podcast. Alright, see you later, guys.